All right, Rabotai, what we're going to discuss today is, in my opinion, a very important subject that determines how we listen to Tkiyat Shofar and what has become accepted. And the question at hand is that really the final say and the final word? And I learned in the Telz Yeshiva, and I remember that after the tefillah, we would have the Baal Tokea would stay and fulfill all of the opinions. He would fulfill all of the different opinions. Shitat, besides Shitat Rashi, Shitat Tosfot, the Rambam, that Atkiya is Chetzi of the Trua, the opinion of how the Shvarim sound, how the Tkiya sound, like 10 different opinions. I'm not going to do that today. What I'm going to discuss is a very strong case to be made that we should be, I wouldn't call it changing, but we should modify the way most, I would say 90% of the places are Tokea Bashofar. And obviously I don't have the shoulders to be able to do that, but maybe the last 10 Tkiyot we should consider what I'm about to say. And some are the opinion that even more than that, as you're going to see. Okay? How many of you are familiar with the Mishnah in Masechet Rosh Hashanah and the Shulchan Aruch Siman Tav Kuf Tzadi? How many are familiar with the subject, so I know who I'm talking to? Okay, fine. You'll let me know if I'm going too fast. You'll let me know if I'm going too fast or I'm going too slow. It says in the Mishnah like this. There are a few important rules to know in regarding Tkiyat Shofar. It's not written in the Torah to do Tkiyah. It's written, Yom Teruah Yihye Lachem. You should have a day of Teruah. It's not written what a Teruah is. It's not written anything about Tkiyah. So the Mishnah says the following: Seder Tikiyot Shalosh Shel Shalosh Shalosh. Seder Tikiyot has to be one of Malchuyot, Zichronot, and Shofrot of 3. What is 3? Shalosh Shalosh Shalosh. A Tkiyah, true a Tkiyah to each one. So that's what we know. You have to have 3 sets of Tkiyah, true Tkiyah, because true is written in the Torah. Shiur Teruah. What's a Teruah? Shalosh Yevavot. Says Rashi, Shalosh Yevavot, Shalosh Kolot Be'alma Kol Shehu. 3 small kolot. That's it. That's what a Teruah is. I know it's night and you're not supposed to learn Tkiyah, you're not supposed to be Tokea Bashofar, and I'm in a bit midrash with people, but I'm going to demonstrate very, very quickly what that means according to Rashi. Right? That's all it is according to Rashi. That's what a Teruah is. Correct? Now, the Braita brought down in the Gemara says like this. How long is it Tkiyah? Shiur Tkiyah ki Teruah. Okay? So, on one hand, it says the Shiur Tkiyah is like Shalosh Teruot, and over here it says that Tkiyah is like a Teruah. Amar Rabaya Tana Didan kachashiv Tkiyah dekulehu babi Teruot dekulehu babi Tanabra kachashiv Chad baba vetulo. The Kitzur, our Mishnah and our Braita comes out that a Tkiyah has to be as long as a Teruah. Tkiyah has to be as long as a Teruah. Teruah is what according to Rashi? Shalosh kolot be'alma kol shu. Then the Gemara says there's a safek. What is this Teruah? Is it a Yevava or is it Genuche Ganach? So the Gemara says that Shiur Teruah Shalosh Shvarim. What is Shvarim? Rashi says Shvarim Aruchim Meyevavot. That's it. Doesn't say more, doesn't say less. Aruchim Meyevavot. He doesn't say what that is. Never says how long a shvarim has to be. Doesn't talk about that in the Gemara. Tosfot brings Shitat Rashi, and then Tosfot brings the Shita of the Riva and the Rivam. The Riva and the Rivam say a Yevava, each Yevava is Shalosh Kolot, which means that 3 Yevavot are 3 times 3, which is 9, right? So according to Rashi, a Trua is Shalosh Kolot Be'alma Kolshu, and according to Tosfot, a Trua is Tisha Kochot, 9 Kochot. And that's how we always heard growing up. A Trua is basically, correct? 9 Kolot. I don't know, I didn't even do 9, but that 9 Kolot, whereas Rashi is 2, 2, 2. That is a Machloket, Rashi, Tosfot. Then Tosfot comes along, and I'm going slow because you're going to see, we're going to have one point where it's going to get a little bit more complicated. Tosfot says that according to this Perush, En lachush im ma'arich ktsat bishvarim. You don't have to worry, you don't have to be concerned if you do shvarim too long. Because according to Rashi, if the shvarim is long, it's already going to hit the shiur of a tkiya. According to Rashi, a trua is shalosh kolot be'alma. So if you're going to do 1 shvarim, so shalosh kolot be'alma, that shiur equals a tkiya. How many seconds is it gets into a little bit of a mess. I'm not going to deal with that right now. But let's say you have, let's say for argument's sake, each trua is 0.3 of a second. So 3 of them is a second. So a tkiya is a second. And if a shvarim is a second, that's already a tkiya. So Rashi, you have to be very careful to make a small shvarim. That's what Tosfot says. But according to Tosfot, you don't have to worry if you're ma'arich the shvarim so much. You don't have to worry. You don't have to worry. That is the machloket, Rashi and Tosfot. Okay? How do we follow lehalacha? So let's open up to the Tur. In Tur, it's written Siman Taf Kuf Tzadi. The beginning of Taf Kuf Tzadi. Sif Gimel. שיעור תקיעה כתרועה ושיעור תרועה כשלוש יבבות. פירוש רש"י 3 כוחות בעלמא כלשהו, it's 3 כוחות בעלמא כלשהו, ולפי זה צריך להיזהר בשברים שלא יאריך בכל שבר כשלוש יבבות שהם 3 כוחות כלשהו, שאם כן יצא מכלל שבר ונעשה תקיעה. So he brings Shitat Rashi down. And believe it, and he says like this, then when you're going to have shvarim and truah together, tashrat, because there's tashrat, tashat, tarat. Since tashrat is shvarim, truah, because we're not sure, maybe it's both of them together, you have to have shiur both. Okay? But he doesn't bring shitat tosfot down at all. And the Rosh is the basis of this, and the Rosh writes a machloket between Rashi and Tosfot. He says, Rabbeinu Chananel, dvarav divrei Kabbalah, says also like Shitat Rashi. So Shitat Rashi, the Rabbeinu Chananel, and the Tur, based on the Rosh, write that the halacha is like Shitat Rashi. Bet Yosef brings this down, and then he brings the opinion of Tosfot, and he says that Nir'in divrei riva revirivam, that the Smag says, he says that the Smag writes that the words of Tosfot are seem to be, but he doesn't seem to say that he follows Tosfot. he brings Rashi's opinion first, and then he brings Tosfot. He brings the Rosh says like Rashi, and the Mordechai says like the Smag says like Tosfot. Not clear. Then later on, the Bet Yosef, a few pages later, brings a whole discussion. If you want to be ma'arich bashvarim or not, are you allowed according to Rashi? So he brings Rabbeinu the Mordechai that says, "En sarich lizayer shelo yarech b'shvarim," that you don't have to. And I will quote the Bet Yosef now. Very important. Ve'ha'olam lo nahagu ken, ela mekatzrim hashever kol ma she'efshar mishum diledat Rashi b'me'at sheya'arichu יצא מכלל שבר והביא תקיעה, אשר לדידי שיר תקיעה וכג' כוחות כלשהו. According to Rashi, with the little bit that you will make the shever long, it already is not a shever and it's a tkiya. Because according to Rashi, a tkiya is gimel kochot kolshehu. So Bet Yosef writes that the minhag ha'olam is to be mekatzer b'shvarim kedat Rashi. That's the Bet Yosef. Let's open up the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Taf Kuf Tzadi. Shulchan Aruch in Siman Taf Kuf Tzadi writes like this. But you have no idea how this is so critical to understand what's going on over here. Sif Gimel. Yesh Omrim. Some say Shiur Tkiya Ketrua, that the Shiur of Tkiya is Ketrua, Shiur Tkiya Keshalosh Yivavot. That's Rashi's opinion. Dehainu Shlosha Kochot Be'alma Kolshu Ve'em Nikraim Turmetin Ve'lefi Zeh, and according to this, Tzarich Lezar Shelo Yarich B'Shever Keshlosha Turmetin. You have to make sure not to make the shever like 3 turmetim. Shimken Yatza Michlal Shever V'Naseh Tkiya. V'yesh Omrim, the Rama brings, you don't have to worry, even according to Shitat Rashi, you don't have to worry if you was marich b'shvarim ksat, as long as you don't do it too long, v'chen noagim. So the Rama is not worried if you go shvarim too long. But the Bet Yosef says, according to Rashi, you have to be careful. Okay? וצריך להאריך בתקיעה של תשרת יותר מבשל תשת, ובשל תשת יותר מטרת. מי הוא? אם מעריך הרבה בכל תקיעה, אין לחוש, אין לשיר מעלה. You could make the tkiya as long as you want, וכן בתורה יכול להאריך כמו שירצה, וכן אם מוסיף על 3 שברים ועושה 4 או 5, אין לחוש. That is the first opinion. The second opinion, ויש אומרים, and some say, ששיעור יבבה כ3 תורמתים. That's Tosfot. ושיעור תרועה כ3 יבבות. ולפי זה, ושם 9 תורמתים. ושיעור תקיעה גם כן 9 תורמתים כתרועה. So according to this, a shvarim is, a trua is 9, so the tkiya has to be at least 9, which we would say is around 3 seconds, 4 seconds. V'lefi zeh, and according to this, en lachush imerich ksat b'shvarim. You don't have to worry if you made the shvarim a little too long, according to Tosfot, because you have a little more wiggle room. Because the shvarim is, you have 9 turmetim. So you could get, every shever could be 3 turmetim, you'll be fine. And says the Tosfot, and says the Shulchan Aruch, וצריך להאריך בתקיעה של תשרת, כשיעור י"ב תורמתין, you have to be מעריך תשרת 12 תורמתין. Why 12 תורמתין? Makes no sense. Trua is 9, and Shvarim has to be at least 9 as well. So we have a few accountants over here. No, 9 plus 9 is 18. He should have said Yudchet Turmitin. Look at the Mishnah Berurah Sif Katan Yudalid. Yudbet Turmitin. Ta'ut Sofet. Tzarich Lomar Yudchet. It's a mistake. It's a mistake. You must write 18. Kol Acharonim. Shulchan Aruch Harav. Everybody, Magen Avram. They all question the Bet Yosef, the Shulchan Aruch. But it's weird. How did such a mistake happen? Continues the Shulchan Aruch. Somebody who did a tkiya that's short and he did a long shvarim, he didn't fulfill the mitzvah. Why? Because he didn't fulfill Rashi, because the tkiyas are not good. And so he did, because the tkiya. And he didn't fulfill Tosfot either because the tkiya is not good. I'm sorry. So he didn't fulfill Rashi because the shvarim was too long, and he didn't fulfill Tosfot because the tkiya is too short. So yotze karech mikan likan. So you can't really fulfill both opinions, and therefore you have to paskin like one of them. What do you do? So the klala mikubal, and I say Rav Ovadia Yosef says this as well, is yesh omrim veyesh omrim halacha ke yesh omrim batra. You have yesh veyesh halacha ke yesh batra, and therefore Rav Ovadia Yosef writes in Chazon Ovadia that you follow the second opinion, which is Tosfot, which is what most of the world does. They do like Shitat Tosfot. They do a long tkiya, regular shvarim, regular tirwa. So it's like you know. Right? That's how you hear everyone doing it, and that is what is Mikubal. I ask you a question. First of and this is what the Acharonim write. Mishnah Berurah writes this. Yud Chet Turmetin equals the shvarim is long. It has to be that length. It says the tkiya has to be Yud Chet. That means the shvarim has to be 9 and the true has to be 9. But there's a mistake according to this in the Shulchan Aruch. That's question number 1. How could there be a mistake? Question number 2 is that it's interesting. The Tur, the Rosh, they all bring Rashi. They don't even bring Tosfot. Bet Yosef doesn't say the halachas like Tosfot. He's unclear. He says that the minhag is like Rashi. And all of a sudden in Shulchan Aruch he takes 180 degrees and he goes like the Yesh Omrim Batra. Number 1, minimal, we should be machmir for Rashi at the end of Tefillah for sure. Because Rashi is the first Yesh Omrim. The Bet Yosef says that was the minhag. That's the Tur. That's the Rosh. The Ritva writes that way. There's other Rishonim also. I'm not going to get into the Rabbeinu Chananel. But that's number 1. Number 2, it's just funny what's going on. The Bet Yosef took a 180 degree turn. So what I want to suggest over here, and I'm going to bring a few proofs that this could be the minhag, is a possible yishuv to the Shulchan Aruch. Where is the concept that shvarim has to be 9 turmetin? Has to be the exact same shiur as tirua. Where is it written? There's a ran that the Bet Yosef brings at the end that says Yud Chet turmetin. But Tosfot never mentions a shiur. Tosfot writes simply, En lachush im marich b'shvarim. You don't have to be concerned. But yesh lachkor. According to the Rosh, maybe the Shiur shvarim is very short as well. Trua, the Gemara says it has to be 9. Shvarim, the Gemara never talks about. As long as the shvarim has a tsura of genuche ganach, that's good enough. The Gemara never talks about what shvarim is. If that is true, you could be miyashiv that the Shulchan Aruch understood in Shitata Tosfot that granted that a trua has to be 9 turmetin, but shvarim could be 3 and a little bit more, as long as it's a little bit more than a trua, as long as it's mashu longer, it's the tzura of ginuche ganach. That might be enough according to Tosfot, and 9 plus 3 is 12, and that's what the Bet Yosef writes. That's what the Shulchan Aruch writes. Who says this mahalich? The Nahar Shalom, one of the great Acharonim brought in the Shulchan Aruch, writes that he wants to be miyashiv the Shulchan Aruch this way. I'll read to you his lashon. The Nahar Shalom writes the following. לעניות דעתי לקיים הגרסה. דאף על גב דלשון הר"ן שהביאה בית יוסף כתוב לומר שצריך לומר בה כשיר ג' שברים בתרועה שהם י"ח תורמתין, היינו משום דפשיטא ליה דכל שבר שיעורו כשלושה תורמתים, כמו שכתב שם שיש בכל שמר כדי ג' יבבות. אבל השולחן ערוך לא פסיקה ליה, השולחן ערוך doesn't hold like the Ran. דהה מכלל דבריו למדנו שיר השבר למעלה, דלדעה קמייתא לא יאריך. The first opinion that says לא יאריך בו כשלושה תורמתים, ולדעה בתרייתא, you could go longer because the trua is longer. But do you have to go longer? You don't have to go longer. The minimum is 3 shvarim. So as long as you did 9 and the 3 and the shiurim says ginuche, who says that's not okay? Says the Nar Shalom. Shiur lemata lo shamanu ve'en lechadesh machloket chadasha. The Gemara doesn't say what shiur shvarim is, so why say something new? And there's no machloket Rashi and Tosfot regarding shvarim, only the gabi truah. Hilkach shapir kamar yud betur metim. תת מתרועה וגימל שברים. והגם שקצת דוחק לומר מה שהעריך בה בגימל שברים אינו עולה אפילו תורמות אחד מדינה. It's a little bit דוחק to say that each turmut is 1 and a little more, and that still is only 12 and only 3. It equals up. It's like 3.5 or 3 3/4. But he says יש פנים גדולים לדבריו ליישב. In other words, על כל פנים, there's a malach to say this not to make the Shulchan Aruch ketoy. The Yad Ephraim and the Machatzit HaShekel, the Ya'avetz, and the Sefer Eshdat write a similar mahalach as well. This is against most Acharonim. Most Acharonim say not this way. But it's something to think about in Shitat HaTosfot. That's number 1. With that, you can understand that the Bet Yosef, when he says, Ha'olam nagu lekatzer hashvarim kishitat Rashi, doesn't mean that Tosfot wouldn't agree to that. Just according to Tosfot, you'd have to make long tiruot. So you could fulfill all opinions. The Shulchan Aruch says you can't fulfill opinions if you made a long shvarim. But if you made a short shvarim, you could fulfill all opinions. So if you make short shvarim, let me give you an example how. I can't do the long tchiyah because that's going to distract people. But I'll make the short shvarim and the long trua. That's going to be L'kulei Alma according to this. But that's a chidush, but it could be. Second of all, there's a big discussion when there's yesh omrim veyesh omrim, halacha ke yesh batra. That's only, every klal, we have to speak about klalim eventually. It's a very big discussion. But the klal of yesh omrim veyesh omrim is subject to the Bet Yosef. The beginning of the Sma in Choshen Mishpat writes that he wrote the Shulchan Aruch for people to learn after they learn the Bet Yosef. And when he writes in the Bet Yosef clearly one way, and in Shulchan Aruch he writes 2 opinions, you look at the Bet Yosef what he held. Usually, Yesh Omrim V'Yesh Omrim Halakha Yesh Batra. But there are places where the Shulchan Aruch is clear, you'll go like the Yesh Omrim Kama. There's an example like that in Siman Kuf Samechet of Ilchot Berachot, where the Shulchan Aruch writes Yesh Omrim Veyesh Omrim, but in the Bet Yosef he's clear like the first Yesh Omrim. The Chikrei Lev in Orach Chaim Siman Nun Dalet Daf Peh and the Ptach Advir Siman Kuf Chav Chet Sivkat Chav Chet, they all write Barur legabe Stam Veyesh Omrim Halacha Kestam Barur Lemaran lo lifsok yastam me'achar sherov ha'poskim ke'yesh omrim. Sometimes, if most poskim they go like the yesh omrim, we'll follow them. Talumot Lev writes this, that if all 3 opinions go against the stam, we follow the yesh omrim. That, by the way, jives with what we said, that we're makabel the klalim, not the gavra. So over here we're makabel the klal of 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 3. So that's going to be machriya more. It's also Rabbi Shalom Esas writes this in Chelek Gimel Simdav Kuf Samech Bet, that by Stam the Yesh Omrim, if you know from the Bet Yosef the halacha is like the Yesh Omrim, that's what you're going to go like. Same thing to over here, Yesh Omrim v'Yesh Omrim, even though usually like Yesh Omrim Batra, you have to say that the Shulchan Aruch was choser from what he wrote, the minhag was in the Bet Yosef. Maybe the Bet Yosef held the Ikar halacha is like the first Yesh Omrim. So those are 2 strong arguments to be able to say that we should hold Shitat Rashi lechatechila. I found afterwards that this is brought down in one line in the Sefer Magen Avot, brings down the Sefer Bikol Shofar, written by a Talmid Chacham in Yerushalayim, Harav Menachem Abitan. There he has a haskama from Rav Yaakov Benaim, the Rosh Yeshiva Nachalat Moshe, should he live and be well. Very big Talmid Chacham. And he writes in his haskama, I'm gonna pull it out over here to read out to you. The haskama of the Sefer Bikol Shofar writes the following. I'll read to you his Lashon. He has haskama from Gdolei Torah, from my Rebbe, Rabbi Zerel Auerbach, give him haskama, a bunch of other people. And he writes like this. It's actually quoted, I don't know how I found this before I wrote Magen Avot. He writes like this. Vehine, lehodio, ki mize. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? Here, you want me to share screen? I'll share screen. Host disable, share screen. It's okay. No offense taken. Hine lehodia. כי מזה זמן רב שהייתי מצטער להבין את מנהג העולם החרדים לדבר השם שמעריכים בשברים בג' כוחות ויותר. Yeah. So, אשר לכאורה זהו דלא כמו שכתב מרן הבית יוסף. He says, I don't understand why nobody's חושש for Rashi, that the Bet Yosef writes that way. להנהיג לקצר בזה, וכשיטות אבות עולם, רבינו חננאל, רש"י ועוד. ועתה בקונשוס הנ"ל שהגיש לפניי, אינני מאוד, מה שראיתי בדן באריכות, and he goes on, and he says, therefore, are you guys with me? Oh, now you want to see, okay, good. Here. And therefore he writes like this, והנה, אף שאין הדבר מוכרע ומוחלט בדת הבית יוסף בזה. It's not 100% what the בית יוסף holds, because it could be, כי ייתכן שחזר בו בשולחן ערוך, לפי הבח והגר"א ועוד, ואין כאן מקום להעריך, maybe he was חוזר, because maybe he was חוזר, אולם לכל הפחות בסדר אחד, נכון לדון בזה. על כל פנים, one סדר, ואם יסכימו גדולי הוראה את ידיהם הנהגו, אין ספק, שזכות גדולה תקלגל על ידו בזה. And he writes in brackets, וזוכרנו שבקהילות הקדושות במרוקו היו נוהגים כן, ואפילו בתקיעת השרת היו מקצרים פחות מחטא טור מתים. They would make the tkias short, and the shvarim would be short. כפי הנראה שהוא על פי יסוד הנ"ל. So based on this, you have an edut that this is what was done in Morocco. I actually had a video that came to me. You can't really learn too much from it, but a little bit. That there was Gentiles that came into Tangiers in 1960, circa 1960, and they actually videoed Rosh Hashanah. I could send you. I don't have access to it on my computer, but somebody sent it to me and he showed it to me. I could send you the link. That you actually hear the Baal Tokea. I don't know if you could be somech on this Baal Tokea. I'm not saying that. But the Shvarim and the Tkit were awfully short. Rabbi Moshe Halevi, the Mechaber Sefer Birkat Hashem, was a big Talmid Chacham from Kisei Rachamim. He was Nifter Young Lo Aleinu. He wrote the Sefer Birkat Hashem and Malve Hashem and Tefillah li Moshe Shelot Utshuvot Chelek Daled. I think it's Siman Mem Zayin or something. Yeah, Siman Mem Zayin. He writes a whole arichut, and he writes 100% that like the Bet Yosef, that the Shulchan Aruch is not arguing both opinions, and he brings the Nahar Shalom, and he says this is the opinion of his Rav Meir Mazuz Shlita, which was the opinion of his father, Rav Matzliach Mazuz Hashem Yikom Damo, that this was his halacha as well that he did, that you don't have to do the Shever Gimel Kochot, even according to Tosfot. and it's unbelievable that according to this, I sent this out to a few Talmidei Chachamim. I only got response from one, which is Rav Yosef Peretz from Panama, a big Talmid Chacham, and he wrote to me that he thinks that he says, I looked up Rabbi Baruch Toledano and Rabbi Baruch HaSabag, two Kitzer Sfarim, and they both write 18 Tur Mitin, which means not like what we're saying. He says, but I think you're right. He says, I think we should do the whole thing like Rashi and the end like Tosfot. That's pretty audacious to change everything. But Rav Benaim is suggesting for everyone, even by Ashkenazim, and this is what they actually do in Link Kolel by the Ashkenazim, that the last Seder should be Shitat Rashi. That means there are people who do that. But according to what we're saying, you could do Shitat Rashi, but still do the Truot longer, and you could fulfill everyone. So as long as you make the Shvarim not more than Gimel Tormitim each, at least in one Seder, there's a very strong argument to do that. Should ask your Rosh Yeshiva. I don't know who the Baal Tokea is. Should ask. I could send them. I have this written up. Also, there's a very strong opinion. Everyone tries to be yotze all the other shitot. This is not only it's a shita in the Shulchan Aruch. It's a shita Bet Yosef says this is the minhag, and there's Acharonim who write this way. So it would sound like this. Of course, you could do the Tkiyot long. You shouldn't be Mekatzer in the Tkiyot like he says they did in Morocco. You should do the Tkiyot long, but the Shvarim short. That way you fulfill everyone. So it would go like this. It's not bad. It's not. It wouldn't be a bad idea to do that. But once again, Rav Ovadia Yosef says the halacha is like Tosfot. Categorically, and he brings the Shara Kavanot that also says that. I didn't have time to check the Shara Kavanot, but he brings the Shara Kavanot, writes that as well. And so I'm not saying to change the Minhag HaOlam of Tosfot overnight, but to know that there's a very strong opinion. As I mentioned, Rav Yaakov Benaim says it was in Morocco. Rabbi Mazuz, the Tfilah Moshe, the Nahar Shalom, the Yad Ephraim on the Taz. There are Chashiv Achronim who say this Mahalach. And Al Tzevaam HaBet Yosbarad and Bet Yosef says this was the minhag in Sfarad. And according to what we said last week, we can understand why this was the minhag in Sfarad. Because the Rosh and the Tur held this way. So obviously it translated the minhag Sfarad and it came to Morocco. No suffix in my mind that was probably it for generations. The question is, it changed now, so do we have the koach to change it back, or how much should we change? That's going to be the big question at hand. Okay? It's a little complicated, but I could send you in writing, and you can read it, and you can work on it. It's important to work on it because you'll understand what's going on in Tkiyot when you learn the sugya properly. That was one inyan. That was one he'ara. I think I said a lot, so I think we're good. Yes. Wait, let me see if I can get earphones, because I don't, too much noise over here. Let me see if I get earphones.